Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Embodiment versus Learning, the physics of living in the miracle zone. It's the first part of our three-part series about going direct with your innate wisdom. Yay! My name is Jennifer Hough, as many of you already know, but in case you didn't, it's Jennifer Hough. And I wanted to give you a little sense of what it is that we're going to be yakking about today. Welcome everybody who's joining us. So in today's, let's say, module of the 3 days, it's all about the main reason people don't make lasting change and why it's so important to understand the way the body operates and how your consciousness operates with the body. All of the ingredients to live in the miracle zone are there, but the problem is most people don't use them because they're too busy surviving. So I'm going to say that again. All of the ingredients in order to thrive are there, but most people don't use them because they're too busy surviving. The other thing is, for eons, we've actually lived in survival, so we've lost even the access to the information, the operating system. How do you operate that way? It's as though we have a really old, Apple computer, and it has a really old operating system, and all the software that will only play on the most up-to-date operating system doesn't play on us. And so how do we update that operating system? So once you understand how the physics ties in with the emotions, the reason why you were born, and then your biology, then you can embody the operating system. So these 3 days are all about getting to that. As you go through the journey, now in the 3 days, you're not gonna find yourself embodying all of who you are. If you did, you'd blow up and you'd probably be in a white room with, you wouldn't feel very good. Trust me, it would be way too much. But to get to the miracle zone, even the beginning parts of the miracle zone, you'll start to see it as possible in a big way by the end of the 3rd day. And this can affect your health. It affects certainly your finances. It affects your sense of energy. It affects your clarity. It affects all those things. And I am living proof of that. I lived for years with migraines, deep depression. I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. Not that that's a bad thing, but I also felt incredibly misunderstood. I always felt on the outside looking in, and like I saw things that nobody else saw. And since that time, so many things have happened, which I'm sure you'll hear about on a video somewhere. But I've become the president of the Wide Awakening because my life experience really took me from almost dying from a toxic exposure and being incredibly depressed to actually understanding the physics and having a series of wakened dreams that allow me to be able to see multidimensionally. I see the hologram of the world, who people are, political systems, monetary systems. I was very intentional about my own awakening. So I look forward to paying all that I learned. I mean, what else is life for unless we can pay forward that which we've embodied, such that others can thrive as well. I mean, for me, that's everything. Why be here if we don't get to pay forward our love and our experience? Yeah. And so I've been in many bestsellers. I've written bestsellers, and I've created the programs Get Out of Your Own Way, the Academy of Human Superpowers, and my favorite, the 10-month-long program called Flight School. So All right, so the second thing we're going to do is we're going to look at your, let's say, your ability to be your own guru. In other words, there are no gurus in this world anymore. I think even Babaji said that in his last incarnation's dying breath. I mean, really, the time for us to become our own gurus is here. And that really is what my job is, to assist you to become your own guru, to be able to go direct with your own innate wisdom. And the last part that we're going to talk about is, how do you hear way more answers? How do you get clarity on your answers and your path forward? How do you go direct with confidence? How do you go direct with your greater wisdom with confidence? So that's what we're going to talk about. That's really the intent of the entire series. So let us begin. This is where our 11 minutes begins, my friends. Here we go. So, why, again, I'm going to say the title, Embodiment versus Learning Something New. There is a difference. The physics of living in the miracle zone involves, first of all, the question, why would anyone ever want to embody anyways? And I'm going to tell you the story of two people because so now when you listen, this goes for all 3 days, listen with your cells. By the way, this series is not complete until because on the third day is when we sort of wrap it up in a bow and you actually get some serious distinctions, but we have to create the context first, right? So why would anyone want to embody? I'm going to tell you two stories. So one of them is about someone who I love and adore, and she plays on our Wide Awakening playground all the time. And what's cool about her is that she had heard me talk about human superpowers all the time, that we're more than what we see, that there's a difference between surviving and thriving, and we can upgrade our operating system. But until you actually physically experience what that feels like, you actually don't really know. It's sort of like riding a bike. People can tell you all day long what riding a bike feels like, or what truly swimming, like floating on top of the water and really efficiently moving feels like, but they don't really get it until they're actually doing it. Do you understand what I'm saying? So today, I'm reminded of the difference between learning and embodiment and why one would do it through two people's comments. First of all, recently I had a wonderful leader in the world come to me, and I started working with her. And we sat down one day for an hour long, and she had a whole bunch of stuff in the past about her relationship to her body, her relationship to love, her relationship to relationships. And there was a lot of struggle. Maybe you can relate. And she had worked with so many people. And I said, listen, I want you to approach our conversation completely different. You have to be willing to transmute all of the belief system. There's probably 20 or 30 of them that you've developed over time based on the evidence of your life. You understand? You've collected evidence. Would you be willing, instead of kicking it old school, would you be willing to actually understand life differently and consider the idea? Consider, you don't even have to believe it, that we can transmute all of it in one less than hour conversation. She said, yes, I'm willing to believe it. I don't know how. I said, okay. So we sat down and we chatted for less than an hour. And I just saw her, that was probably a month ago. Now, understand so this is why embodiment, this is why it's so important. I really want you to listen with your cells, which is part of embodiment. I want you to listen cellularly to what I'm saying. You can talk all day long to someone about shifting their brain or shifting their understanding or trying to give them a different paradigm or putting them in a different belief system. But until you actually get their left and right brain to agree to a deeper truth, there will be no embodiment. In other words, there's no permanent shift. She'll be living out the same relationship and the same story over and over and over again. Might take a little bit longer to get to that broken record, but eventually you get there. By the time it finished, she said to me, I don't know what happened to me. And now it's a month later and I just saw her and she said, I can't believe it. I don't know how that happened. I don't know how I upgraded, but all of that stuff that I've been carrying for the last several years is gone. And she was so deeply grateful, and you can tell that she's changed her relationship to relationships, because already she told me about a couple of stories where she took her power back, and she didn't have to think about it. She didn't have to follow someone else's steps. She was just so connected to her innate wisdom because she was out of the way of consciousness. And when she connected to that innate wisdom, what happened was she changed a whole bunch of relationships in her life to be more congruent with her heart. And that's what happens in embodiment. You don't need to figure out logical steps. You don't need to do affirmations. You don't need to look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself how great you are. You actually cellularly get how the universe sees you, and you also cellularly start to be able to commune with consciousness such that its innate wisdom becomes accessible, and all you want to do is act from it because it feels expansive and delicious. But that requires an operating system change, and that's the work that she and I did together. So why? Well, first of all, because your default way of approaching life becomes completely different. You know how you see some people and they seem happy all the time? They seem like they have it handled, or they seem like they just have a way of relating to life that's very different than yours, or relating to their body, or relating to their health, or relating to their whatever. And how you know is that their finances show up differently, or their body shows up differently, maybe in a way that, really inspires you. So the operating system is different. How do you upgrade the entire operating system so thousands of thoughts come along with it, rather than having to change the thoughts one at a time, which is what most people do? That is how you know you've embodied a shift, okay? Does that make sense? Am I like talking crap, or are you, do you get what I'm saying? I know you probably don't know how to get there, but that's what this series is for, and it's also what Get Out of Your Own Way to Going Direct with Consciousness is for. So there was another person that, very simply, she just wrote me a beautiful email. She said, it struck me how amazing I find that things have shifted so significantly for me since being in this tribe almost just a little under a year. It's like layers of programming have just peeled away, and I don't really know how it's happened. And they are looking forward to more and more flow. She just wrote that to me this morning, so I wanted to share that with you as it's a perfect example. She was starting to see more broadly and hear more broadly, and it kind of freaked her out, and she was asking me the question like, why is this happening? And I said, because you're upgrading. So I know it's a non-linear process, but you got to know that you're doing like 10 years of work in a very short amount of time. Does that make sense? So that's why you do the work of embodiment. It's for people that are not really interested in spending the rest of their life analyzing themselves. They really just want to get on with getting on with it. So what does it mean? So this is where we get juicy, people. So you cannot listen to this with your ears and your head and your logic, okay? If you listen with your ears and your head and your logic, you'll be doing the linear approach, which is learning. But today is about embodiment. So let's even start with the way that you listen to what we're talking about, and see if you can experience what I'm talking about. So you may be wondering why I have this picture up here. And so listen with your cells. I'll tell you why. So what does it mean to embody? And then we're going to close out with some homework, and I'm going to tell you about tomorrow. All right, so what does it mean to embody versus learn? It means this. Literally, it affects your biology. It affects your biochemistry. So, people that feel fundamentally fulfilled and inspired by life, people that feel like they get very clear messages and they're able to dance without fear, those are people that have generally embodied the upgraded operating system. They're people who can find their way to greater health. They're people that don't fuss about their finances. They find their flow. And so you can't do that by talking about changing your thoughts, by me telling you the thoughts you need to think. Here's what embodiment looks like. You're made, now feel this. Feel what it must feel like to do exactly what I'm about to say, because even this is an upgrade to your operating system, okay? So just breathe for a second. Your body is made of between 50 and 100 trillion cells, okay? Those 100, and don't try to figure out what I'm saying. Don't try to figure it out, because if you try to figure it out with your intellect, we're back to learning versus feeling. So what I saw in the Wakened Dreams I talked about earlier is I saw that this body is made of 50 trillion cells. My body is made of 50 trillion cells, so is yours. Those 50 trillion cells have DNA in the middle of them. That DNA has chromosomes. The chromosomes, or the DNA and the chromosomes go together. The chromosomes, at the end of each of the chromosomes, are little telomeres. Now you know that DNA is three-dimensional. DNA tells your three-dimensional body its characteristics. So this DNA actually has little telomeres. It also, the cells have receptor sites on the outside of them. So you may think, oh my God, this is so complicated. That's as complicated as it's going to get. Just stay with me. Because you have, let's say, 50 to 100 trillion cells, 10,000 times the number of people in the planet, and you know how they get along. You have 50 trillion cells in your body, and they get along perfectly harmoniously. Why? Because your body is sending and receiving photon packages of light, just like a tree does, just like a plant does, just like a dog does. Many studies have shown that we both receive photon packages of light from everything outside of us, including those plants and trees, and each other, and we emanate photon packages of light. What's the significance of that? Well, those photon packages of light from consciousness, from life, from those around us, are what actually has our cells be a part of the biochemistry, the three-dimensional piece for sure. But what was actually seen is between 12 and 15% of the communication that happens between these receptor sites and consciousness, between telomeres and consciousness, 12 and 15% of the activity of your cells and your chromosomes. Let me say that again. Between 12 and 15% of the activity of your cells and your chromosomes is not happening on the three-dimensional plane. It's happening on the photon-related multi-dimensional plane. In other words, there is a communion happening between you and your environment and the people around you and life itself and the sun. And you are sending and receiving very efficient packages of information back and forth. It is the scientific understanding of why we're intuitive or instinctual. But the problem is, listen closely, because this is the key to everything else we're going to talk about. People have been taught that they have to listen to their logic. They've been taught that they need to listen to other people who are successful or happy or healthy. They've been taught that there are steps and they're very logical. We are hell-bent on trying to figure it out intellectually, how to have a fluid life, but we at the same time have been given all the tools to be able to go direct with consciousness. We are sending and receiving information from our telomeres, which are in our DNA, and from our cells constantly out to life, giving life information about who we are and why we're here. And through our action, those photon packages of light contain the information that is based on the action we take, because the action we take is what communicates, what is the greatest representative of what we believe. So our actions actually are a reflection of what we think and believe. They're a symptom of what we think and believe. And you are emanating most powerfully the beliefs and thoughts that you have consistent with your actions. If you look at your actions, you're telling consciousness, you're telling life itself, you're telling the universe who you are and what you're willing to do. It isn't until you change your fundamental relationship to life that you start doing and saying and being differently. And when you do and say and be differently, those photon packages of light that go out to the universe, out to consciousness, out to each other, so we start responding to each other differently, far beyond even what our actions are, because we have 50 trillion cells giving off information about each other, and each other is receiving them through our cells, through our telomeres. And when people respond to us, they're responding to us partially from what we say and what they three-dimensionally see. But truly, since most of who we are, over 90% of who we are, is actually the space between the atoms, the space between this three-dimensional world, what happens is people start responding to you based on the information you're sending to them metaphysically. And that's why things are very hard to change. You can wish and intend all you want. You can do vision boards all you want. But until you get out of the way of your magical, alchemical, incredible, electrical, magnetic self, the one that came here to sing and dance and play with the entire universe, the one that the universe thought was a good idea, until you catch up with the good idea that the universe thought you were, and then start to go direct with these photon packages of light that consciousness is constantly trying to pull you towards the reason why you were born, until you catch up with that operating system where you're going direct, what happens is everything seems hard. Can you kind of get why? Like if you're not going direct with your communion between consciousness, based on the reason you were born. That's why so many of you are always feeling this calling forward. Like, I'm supposed to be more, I'm supposed to do more. There's supposed to be, not like busyness, more like fulfillment. I'm supposed to be happier. There's supposed to be more abundance. You're not wrong. That is the calling of your greater consciousness. And that's where that feeling comes from, those photon packages of light. So that's where we begin. That is the difference between the operating system of survival, where you're listening to other people and step-by-steps from books and all that kind of stuff, and actually thriving. Thriving is where you are living by your innate, broader wisdom. So, tomorrow, so I hope that's clear. So embodiment happens where you're not learning the how-tos in your brain of how to get somewhere, but you're actually having a cellular shift because your understanding of life changes and you're more willing to listen to your innate intelligence, and you're willing to exercise the muscle of that, and you're willing to take in how you do that. So the first question for today is, are you willing to actually learn how to commune with life that way? Are you willing to upgrade your operating system? Are you willing to even believe that you can upgrade your operating system? I mean, if other people can do it, you can do it too. The process of embodiment requires you answering those questions to the affirmative sincerely. Because as long as you're surviving, as long as you're following mental steps, as long as you're following oh, I should do this because other people have done this, instead of following your own way, as long as you're trying not to be judged or trying to prove yourself, that is not in flow with your innate wisdom. The universe already thought you were a good idea. You don't have to prove anything. I mean, who are you proving it to? The universe already thought you were a good idea. To some human? No, you don't need to do that. So that's what getting out of your own way is all about. So the process of embodying that which that's what we're going to go through next time. Just so you know what we're going to talk about tomorrow, it's about exercising the muscle. You really want to show life and your body and your biochemistry that you're serious. So there's 3 parts to what we're going to do tomorrow. One is understanding what it looks like to exercise the muscle. Okay? It's how do you tell your body and your consciousness, how do you shift the operating system? Right? So we're going to talk about how you exercise the muscle of living and thriving so that consciousness responds to you, and what comes to you magnetically is based on your thriving self, not your surviving self. Make sense? The second thing we're going to talk about is not just making friends with the unknown, but how do you change your brain so you make the unknown exhilarating, phenomenal, like so exciting? How do you change your brain so that you're actually thrilled to understand the unknown? You stop trying to control life. So that's what we're going to talk about, the second thing. And the third thing in the process of embodying we're talking about tomorrow is about what does it actually take to change the operating system? How do you change the operating system? Right? How do you keep that upgrade going? And how do you keep up with the speed of consciousness? Because your operating system is always evolving. Exactly like a computer. They're always making updates. A computer is a perfect analogy for this. It's like the perspective through which your computer sees the software. It's exactly the same thing. So last but not least, for the next module, a little bit of homework. First of all, answer the questions that I asked just earlier. The second is see if you can allow yourself to be a witness, to watch all of the habitual thoughts going through your mind, all of the belief systems that stop you. Because anything that stops you is man-made. And you are creation-made. So shift your perspective about the thoughts that confine and limit, and start to feel the thoughts that expand and release. If you're thinking thoughts that expand and release and create possibility, don't listen to what I'm saying right now as a should. You shouldn't think those thoughts. I don't care if you think those thoughts. I'm more interested in changing the operating system so that you're always in those thoughts. Do you understand what I'm saying? That is way too much hard work, changing your thoughts. But start to notice how your body feels when you're thinking thoughts that confine and limit versus when you think thoughts that are expansive and assist you to see more deeply. Okay? Again, not interested in you changing your thoughts by changing your thoughts. Interested in having you have a much deeper understanding of how this operating system upgrades so that your thoughts permanently shift, which means that your magnetics will permanently shift. You just change the way you look at life, therefore you can no longer have those thoughts. And if you can go direct with consciousness, you'll start to develop a confidence that everything is happening for you and everything is coming your way. But it doesn't matter how much anyone says that to you. It's like riding a bike. Until you actually change the operating system so you can ride the bike, you're going to keep falling over. So we're going to talk about how you change the operating system. I'm so appreciative of you being here with us. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and the little button. We'll put a little button down below. Again, welcome your questions, welcome your comments. Let me know if that was clear. Want to make sure that it was super clear for you. And happy to say hi as well. So big hugs, lots of love all the way around, and can't wait for our second module. Yay!